What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? Welcome to the show, gang. Tuesday afternoon, casual little 4-game slate. Hopefully a little bit calmer than last night's total pandemonium. Longest injury list of the season, I think, yesterday. And then on top of that, we had a bunch of weird little starting lineup changes. As mentioned in the chat, we had Lonnie Walker going over. Not a great game by Lonnie by any stretch of the imagination. I pointed him out as being kind of an outlier where he was on the board as looking weird next to the guys that he was with, but definitely didn't see a 0 coming. So that was fun. Ugly day across the board, I think. We hit on some good plays. We had a lot of the stuff correct. Some of the chalk worked out. A lot of things didn't, but not the best day overall for DFS at all. Hopefully one of the worst days of the season, and we move on from there, wrap up the NBA season in a little bit better style. But we've got baseball starting on Thursday. Very, very excited about that. We've got Cujo in the chat, Steven Leibowitz, Travis Wyndham's here. Steven says Lonnie Walker the fourth became Lonnie Walker the third. Yeah, that would do it. That was definitely not a quality performance from Lonnie. Let me get waiting on AceMine to finish running. Our pals over at acemine.io. Just had to rerun the FanDuel sim real quick because I realized that I had accidentally used the DraftKings names. Each site has a different names template, and if you run it with the DraftKings names, guys like Trey Murphy, Larry Nance, Jaime Jaquez, Timmy Hardaway Jr., Derek Lively, all the guys with extensions on their names don't come through because they're named differently from site to site. And now we've got it. There we go. Make sure nothing looks too weird. Oh yeah, this is going to be fun. So it's D-Lo Day. Happy D-Lo Day to everybody. Angelo Russell, highest owned player on both sites. Sorry to get all zoomed in on you guys there. Had to get the board together. There it is. So, going by DK win rates, highest overall marks, D'Angelo Russell at the top of the board, and then the big man Anthony Davis there. Two of them are at the top of the board because we've got no LeBron James for the Lakers tonight. You can also see a couple spots down. Taurean Prince hitting the board from the Lakers. Austin Reeves a few spots lower than that. Just a 4-gamer, so it's fairly concentrated today, but a couple standout plays from Los Angeles for one. Should be a good game going up against the Bucks. Najee Marshall popping a little bit. That's a weird one, a little bit price-driven there. One of only a few guys that have a reasonable complement of minutes and have been performing pretty capably from that $4,000 price tier on DraftKings. $5,000 on FanDuel still looks like it's holding up on the short slate. Some interesting directions for this one. Patty Connaughton hitting the board a little bit more on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. He's only 3,300 over there. Could get awfully messy awfully quick, though, on a slate like this. Powers in the chat. Power says, oh, damn, late queue on Luka and Maxey. Well, Kyrie to the top spend-ups. Yeah, if that's a twist here at 4:30. Let me note that on the site real quick. All right. Well, that's a little annoying. Not gonna lie. Because, as Power points out, if Luka doesn't go, Kyrie shoots way up the board. And he's not. I don't even see him right now. So that's fun. Good way to start the show. Yeah, Kyrie's all the way down here right now. A little 5%er on FanDuel. Didn't land in any of the top 150 despite a 5% win rate. He's 9,500 on the FanDuel slate. It's not like he's super discounted. On DraftKings, 2%. didn't get to him in the top 150 over there for 93. Point guard, shooting guard on both sites, but we're talking about an uptick from he's 1.24 for this season. In the version of this with Luka, we've been around 1.14 of late, down about a tenth of a point. It's about where I put him today. But if we lose Luka, this is important enough to talk about off the top. Who else? Let's just go. Feb. 222 minutes, that's enough for a little guideline. So 222 minutes for Kyrie since the start of February without Luka on the floor, 462 possessions. He goes from the 1.24 that he's been at for the season and the 1.14 that he's been at over this exact same stretch of time with Luka on the floor. He goes all the way up to 1.54. So that's a massive jump. That's like 0.4 of a fantasy point per minute for Kyrie if there's no Luka. So just assume if we don't have Luka Doncic, this jumps to basically top of the board kind of level. Yeah, I don't know about this 96%. Who is that? Jesus, Torian Prince. Didn't spot that. 40% win rate, 96% of the top 150. We'll talk about it. But figure this level at least probably more like what numbers you're seeing here from Malik Monk. These high 30s to 40s on DraftKings. DraftKings typically stays a little bit more tame in this kind of a range, where FanDuel can get a little bit carried away with some of these exposures, like 96%, 74% D-low, and a lot more comfy with that. But point being, if we lose Luka, fire up the Kyrie shares alongside the D'Lo shares and the Anthony Davis shares. Those would be if you want to talk about a core, those would be three just absolute core plays. Two of them already are, D'Lo and AD. AD more so on DraftKings than on FanDuel, but he is to me, a key piece on FanDuel as well. I plan on having him at 11.5 in my lineup. 18.67% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 20.75% win rate. That compares pretty favorably. It depends on how things come together, but the one that I was clicking together, just eyeballing it, I was definitely planning on AD in there. But we'll see where he lands as we look at the top lineups. Let's talk about the slate, the environment real quick here. Just a 4-gamer. We've got Golden State and Miami and the Lakers at Milwaukee, both at 7:30. OKC at New Orleans at 8, and then 2 hours till Dallas, Sacramento to end the night. And as of the last time I updated, which was just before the show, but the Dallas line might have slight movement based on those questionables, who knows. Golden State at Miami, 3-point spread there. Golden State favored over Miami, 218 total. Let me just go to Pinnacle. I want to check that Dallas line. Yep, a little bit of movement. Let me update that. Everything's already different. And I thought today was going to be easier. All right, so the line jump from, was it Sacramento? Yeah, Sacramento was favored in the last game. I'm jumping ahead. In the Dallas at Sacramento game, the last game of the night, the 10 o'clock game, it had been a 1-point spread in favor of Sacramento at home, 233-point total. It jumped to a 2.5-point spread, 232.5-point total. So the point total only came down by 0.5 point, but the spread increased by 1.5. Make of that what you will. Obviously, we're going to have to sweat that news on Luka. If Luka goes, he's Luka. We'll look at where he was. We'll judge it from there. So anyway, Golden State at Miami. Now it's 2.5. Golden State favored by 2.5 on the road. 218-point total there. Lakers at Milwaukee. Milwaukee favored by 9.5 with no LeBron. 232.5 point total. OKC at New Orleans, just a 1 point game there. OKC favored by 1 on the road. 224 point total there. Take that guy too. Injuries wise, it's a tame board compared to how it's been the last few days, but obviously a big chunk of news now. So we've got Luka Doncic and Maxi Kleber as of the start of this show are now questionable. Jimmy Butler probables to start the day. A couple big ones: Jimmy Butler, Anthony Davis, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and then MarJon Beauchamp and Chris Middleton are also probable. Questionables: Trace Jackson Davis, Jaime Jaquez, Kevin Love, Caleb Martin, and then out: Tyler Hero, Josh Richardson, Duncan Robinson. Nothing new the last few games there. LeBron James, Biggie, Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, Christian Wood. Nothing new there. And then Brandon Ingram also out for New Orleans. So some key guys already out. Some key guys that we're expecting. The reporting on Jimmy Butler this morning was within minutes of one another. The reports came out that he both was probable and also did not go through shoot around. So that's another kind of make of it what you will situation. Considering that he's probable all day, I would have to expect that he's going to go. But just a fun little wrinkle to have on the slate that he didn't go through shoot around. Yeah, Mama hits it on the head. Luka News is the biggest on the slate. Late game with no pay up to replace his salary. Yeah, what's the most comparable? You can get to, if you're talking DK, you've at least got Sabonis there at 10.5. So if you're talking about the util spot, like you use, as long as you're keeping it in mind, you can go to 10.5 with Sabonis and then maybe improve another spot if you have a second spot from that game, which is, as we talked about yesterday, I would definitely make sure to leave a second spot. You could also do the direct pivot in the same sense. You would want to have Kyrie in that situation. So having Kyrie at 9.3 as a direct pivot kind of makes it work. You've got De'Aaron Fox. He's a lot cheaper on DraftKings at 88. He's closer on FanDuel at 96. But you do have some reasonable spots. I would just make sure to leave 2 spots from that game. If you're going to play Luka going into the slate, put 2 spots there so that you can pivot one of them to Kyrie and then upgrade another spot. Or you could pivot to Sabonis, but again, just having Kyrie as the direct pivot who gains massive, massive ground, I think would be the right move. DraftKings MLB exclusive offer. See how you can earn DK dollars. Ooh, that's what everybody wants. How compelling, DraftKings. Speaking of promos, our pals over at acemine.io, we've got a promo code going over there now. rotoscouts is the promo code. No big surprise there. Spelled exactly how you see it on the screen, exactly how you punch it in to get to the site or any of our other stuff. Wait to hear back on exactly what the offer entitles subscribers to. But at the very least, if you go over there, maybe don't do it today. Although if you're compelled to sign up for basketball, please, by all means, go sign up today. Don't wait on me. acemine.io. Been pushing these guys all year. Good dudes, great product. But the reason I said maybe you wait today is tomorrow. I hear tomorrow is the launch of the baseball product. But I don't actually know what our official offer is. But I do want to mention, if you happen to go over to AceMine today, plug in rotoscouts as a promo code. And if you go over there, maybe it'll pop up and you can tell me what the offer is. But I am waiting to hear back from those guys. I'll let you guys know as soon as I know. We are officially in business, and I do have it on good authority that they'll have the baseball optimizer up here tomorrow. And we've got another day beyond that. So if it has to take till Thursday morning, that's what it is. But it'll be there. Optimizers, sim products. It's killer stuff. It's exactly what we're looking at on the screen here, right? That's what the sims are run against here with the top 150 and the win rates that we look at in the top 1%. So, as discussed, I do think that we have, at least again, some reasonable pivots as long as you're leaving 2 spots open, and the primary one being Mr. Kyrie Irving, who is not showing a lot right now. But bear in mind, these things change dramatically as we get toward lock. Let's talk about some of the plays that we know for sure a little bit better. So again, D'Angelo Russell, he didn't play in the last game, but for the season, he's been at 1.03 FanDuel points per minute. Over the recent stretch of time when LeBron's not on the court, he's at 1.09. It's like right where I've got him today. So a very, very minor uptick for D'Lo. But there is plenty of expectation, plenty for him to do in this game in terms of just carrying the workload, carrying some of the scoring load. More than capable of doing it from a very good mid-range price at $7,500 on FanDuel, $7,200 on DraftKings. He's got positional flexibility to help him out on the FanDuel slate, so you can move him around the board. You can put him in with De'Aaron Fox, for example. There were some positional blockers at point guard yesterday on FanDuel that were annoying. We loved... I forget who some of them were, but like Pritchard was only a point guard. So like there was no flexibility around him. And then, what was it? Freddie Van Vliet, Luka, a couple other guys that were all locked in just point guard only now. So they've removed some of that flexibility around the point guard, shooting guard guys on FanDuel for at least enough to make them interesting from day to day. So D'Lo looking very, very strong, nearly 75% of the top 150 on the FanDuel slate. He had a 60% win rate in that last sim that I ran. He is the most popular player on the entire FanDuel slate. Let me reload the ownership here. He was pushing upwards of half of all lineups the last time I saw it. Looks like it dipped a little bit. We're aggressively ahead of the field here, but so is our win rate. If you wanted to come down, if you don't want 75% of your lineups with D'Angelo Russell in it, I can understand that. He's burnt us before. But somewhere around 60%, 50% at worst, I think is pretty appropriate here on FanDuel. We got to him 59% of the time in the top 150 on DraftKings against a 40% win rate. His ownership last I saw was right in line with where that win rate is. Reload that one as well. I'm going to leave this on the Lakers because it's going to be really relevant. Yeah, we got to him a little bit more, or a lot more than the win rate and the public. The public is like right in line with this. Put 20% on top of that, and anywhere in between those two marks is pretty good. But I think if you're rostering a lot of D'Lo, like you don't necessarily want to roster a lot of them and be locked right in with the field at 50. I think if you're going to take that much of them, you probably want to have that edge, and or at 40 rather. You probably want to have that edge and take it up to like 60, somewhere around there. FanDuel, you've got more room. But he also looks better on FanDuel. And then AD, another super interesting piece with no LeBron. 1.51 for the season. Over the stretch since the start of February, no LeBron on the court, 1.67. The most significant per minute mark on the slate, higher than Giannis's season long. We'll see what happens with Luka. But that makes AD just a significant, is the high projection, significant potential contributor on this slate. Played 40 minutes the last game, put up 66.7 FanDuel points. He doesn't necessarily need LeBron to be out to succeed, obviously. 1.51 is still pretty damn good on its own, but you're gaining a little bit of edge there in addition to that. So love the AD spot today. 20.7% win rate on FanDuel. He's power forward and center eligible for 11.5. Got to him 18.67% of the time. 36 to 41% across the board on DraftKings at just 10.3. Seems pretty affordable when you've got Giannis at 11.3, putting up 1.64. So just bear that in mind. For 1,000 less, you're getting AD with production at this same level, 1.67. It's 1.67 on a FanDuel scale, so roughly around here. So you're getting that kind of level of production for 1,000 less from a comparably talented player already. On the other side of that game, Giannis is pulling significantly less ownership than AD, but you're paying 1,000 more to get the same level of production. He's probable. We're expecting him to play, but there is that. AD is also probable. I won't use that as a point of comparison between those two guys. We got more Giannis on the FanDuel slate at 22% with a 13.2% win rate for the 11-7. Curious to see how often they land in lineups together. If at all. Not necessarily the best idea to jam two stars together. Or the two highest price stars anyway. On DraftKings, 15.5% winner at 11-3. Got to him in 10% of the top 150. So obviously the AD piece is owned by a lot more of the public, but it's just a better option overall in terms of how it sims out, in terms of a similar matching production, matching per minute numbers, and matching overall median projection. Taurean Prince is the wrinkle. Should we just keep talking like this, or do we want to go position by position? What do you guys want to do? Jake's here. 2 days till opening day. Damn right. Can't wait. Jake asks, thoughts on builds not getting to any players over 10K? I haven't looked at individual lineups. I'll take a quick peek. Judging how much AD's coming up, I would say that might not be the best foot forward, but the second one on the board. I mean, there's enough guys in like the high nines, the high eights to high nines kind of range, the Zions, the Darren Foxes of the world, that I'm sure there's a good construction there. And for example, the second lineup here, as I'm peeking ahead to AceMind, acemind.io. The DraftKings lineup, second one, I believe everybody in this lineup qualifies for that. Yeah. D'Lo, Pat Connaughton, Jimmy Butler, Taurean Prince, Trace Jackson Davis, Darren Fox, Najee Marshall, Zion Williamson. So as long as you've got like a three-man like Jimmy Butler, Darren Fox, and Zion to pay that off, they're all essentially as talented as or thereabouts as anybody that's on the 10K price tier. So as long as you're getting like three of those guys, and then reasonable production, we can question the Connaughton, Taurean Prince, and Najee Marshall selections. But you can see we've got two of those guys are right there, and Connaughton right there. D'Lo, obviously the prime piece of chalk on the entire thing. I kind of like that lineup, to be honest. The one above it, the top overall lineup, actually manages to leave D'Lo out of it, shockingly, but it does have Anthony Davis. It might just be it's a good lineup, but it might just be a product of the fact that it won out overall. It might just be a product of this batch of Sims. If you run it again, might not come up. But Chris Paul, Austin Reeves, Chris Middleton, Taurean Prince, Trace Jackson Davis, CJ McCollum, Najee Marshall, Anthony Davis. That's kind of a funky one. That first one I read, by the way, the second overall leaves 200 on the table, so you got some room to spend. The fourth overall is even weirder. It's got Fox in it. It's got Draymond in it. And then even more mid players, but it left 400 on the table. It's just a product of there just being 400 on the slate. Does look like you can go that route, though, in terms of how these pay off. Because those stars are another like price tier up. Giannis at 11.3 is a big leap. Luka is a big leap. AD's a smaller jump, obviously, on DraftKings. Like AD and Giannis are a lot more comparable price-wise, with only a $200 difference on FanDuel. FanDuel, I would expect, is probably a little tighter in terms of having to spend more of your salary. Like just eyeballing the board here, there's a lineup not too far down the board that's at just 49.3, 49.4 is another one. So there's surprisingly good lineups that leave some salary on the table. Could you improve those lineups in a clicking it together before the slate sense? Absolutely. But can lineups perform while leaving salary on the table, not necessarily rostering a 10K guy? Yeah, it looks like. Go position starting with center instead of guard. Sure, that's a good idea. Why not? Just because I think the news on Luka is big and they probably won't make another announcement anytime soon. Yeah, it's also probably true. Although it's almost 5 already. So we're coming up on the 5:30. It's amazing how this goes by. So AD is the top of the board on both sites. You can also get him at power forward on both sites, though. And you do have some value. Like I like the upside for Trayce Jackson-Davis in 25 minutes, 15% win, 10% of the top 150 on FanDuel for 6,300. And then you get him at 52. He's center only on DraftKings, so you're making some decisions with the positioning or using, probably AD. Or no, actually, what time is that Miami game? Those are both 7:30 games, right? Yeah. So you're making some positioning around who you would have like util, power forward, center slots, especially if you're trying to cram multiple big man stars. And I'm thinking it's probably not possible to get AD and Giannis into a overly competitive lineup together. But like maybe certainly AD and Chet looks pretty viable. He's only 7,500. His upside's a little questionable given how he simmed out here. But if you're looking to do something like that, maybe you're making some decisions around who goes where, given those start times. But Trayce Jackson-Davis looks pretty solid. Didn't get too carried away. He's been at 1.20 for this season. And 1.19 over the last couple of weeks. Call it 1.20. I gave him a minor bump downward because of the matchup against Miami. There's a natural bump from the Vegas line from the defensive matchup. And then, when I get in there and manipulate and change these rates in minor ways, give him a little bit of an additional downtick just for the matchup against Miami, which isn't overly great. But I still think he looks pretty good here. And he's been a very, very good per minute contributor in a lot of spots. And it's not a huge slate. So somebody like that in an effective number of lineups on both sites. There's a lot of them on DraftKings because he's very cheap comparative to the rest of the potentially the rest of the guys with a true ceiling. He's the cheapest. Right? Larry Nance doesn't have a similar true ceiling at 49 compared to his 52. PJ doesn't really. Brolo, I would argue that he's probably the closest, despite being further down the board when we sort by win rate in terms of the true ceiling upside. Maybe Rui with no LeBron there just has a weird upside game. But really, I think it is probably Trayce Jackson-Davis with the, not saying he has necessarily a monster true ceiling, but I do believe that he's got a true ceiling for the cheapest price. So I think that's why he's, I know that's why he's popping up here. And I think that's why he's kind of a compelling option. Public has him less than our win rate, which is always good, and significantly less than our top 150 ownership. So you've got room if you don't love the play, if you want to make room for other options that also look good to you. And there are some. I mean, all these guys are, 10% to 8% to 6 and change is not a gigantic difference. So all these guys look reasonable as interchangeable parts. So if you want to make a little bit more room for them, if you took that down to even 25%, you're still a decent chunk ahead of the field. You've got a little position on him, and you're around our win rate. But having the field below that win rate is pretty nice. I like that spot. And then on FanDuel, we're more in line with the field on FanDuel. The little tiny sliver of edge between the public's projected ownership and our win rate, but the public is ahead of our top 150 ownership. So a little bit of a decision point on FanDuel. Doesn't play as strong at the 6,300 as he does at 52 on DraftKings. Giannis is always playable. Giannis is a luxury item. Power forward only on FanDuel. 13.2% winner, 22% of the top 150 over there. Always a strong option. Little head-to-head matchup, him and AD. Always fun. Does have a limiting effect. They're both going for the same rebound. There's only one of them's going to come down with it. They're both, one's defending the other and is doing better. One's feeling more energetic. Whatever the case may be. But I think there's probably not room for both at 11.5 and 11.7 on FanDuel. I doubt we see it unless a lot of additional value opens up. But I think there's a good case to be made for either one being a prime star, considering how they simmed out on the FanDuel slate. Pretty close in terms of our top 150 exposure. Giannis actually leading the way at 22% versus 18.6%, but AD had the stronger overall winning performances. On DraftKings, it's a lot more stark, just given that price difference I was talking about before. A little under a 16% win rate for Giannis, but just 10% exposure in our top 150. He's owned at a minor step ahead of that by the public here. But no issues bouncing between 10, 15%, somewhere around there. If you wanted to go up to 20, you're, the size of the mistake in going from 10, 15 to 20 on a player like Giannis is pretty minimal on most slates. It's a cost benefit for other spots decision, basically. But I think you do have a little bit of additional room. The field is just slightly below the win rate, slightly above our top 150 exposure on him. Danny Gafford's been really productive since going to Dallas. Overall, he's been pretty productive just on the season in general. 1.25 FanDuel points per minute, 1.16 on DraftKings. Put up 54.7 FanDuel points in just 27 minutes the other night. Over the recent stretch of games, basically since the start or since mid-February, 1.41 FanDuel points per minute. Pretty good. Just got him at 26 minutes tonight. He averages right around there. It's about what he's been playing since joining Dallas. So I like the spot. I like the way it masks out on DraftKings. Nearly 25% of our top 150. I think he's a functional center, just kind of like Trace Jackson Davis is. Probably a little bit more security there, just given they're both good per minute performers, but Danny Gafford's been a little bit better. If we lose Maxi Kleber, there's potentially a couple more minutes for him. Maxi's down here. He's at 20 minutes. I could see a couple of additional going Gafford's direction. Maybe he gets up to like 30. Played 27 the other night. So 27, 28 on a reasonable day. Into the 30s if we got no Maxi. A lot of upside there for Danny Gafford at 6,000 on the DraftKings slate. 14% win rate already. Just under 11% with a for finishing in the top 1% of tournaments. 5.13 points per dollar. One of, 5 guys at 5 or more points per dollar that have center eligibility. Definitely in the mix for a fair amount of shares. On FanDuel, he's just kind of a playable part. 6,900. You only get one bite at the apple at center. Depends on probably the positioning and where Anthony Davis lands. Considering that we've got Taurean Prince was looking pretty good, dragging some of these shares at power forward. I think he's power forward only. I could see AD landing at center in a fair amount of FanDuel lineups, in a fair amount of his nearly 20% anyway, and boxing out some of these shares. I think 6,900 is borderline okay price-wise. You can get away with it, but it's nowhere near a discount price. So it definitely limits the Gafford exposure. Under 5% of the top 150, 6.5% win rate on FanDuel. Draymond looks a little bit better on the DraftKings side. 10% of the top 150, 12% win rate. 6% of our top 150, 10.8% win rate on FanDuel. Just is who he is kind of a spot for Draymond. 30 minutes, 6,900 on FanDuel, power forward and center. 63 on DraftKings, same positioning. He's just going to go out, do Draymond things, give you around he's 1.09 for the season. Over their recent run, he's been at 1.03. I gave him that, and then I took a minor haircut for the matchup. So, like I said, is who he is spot for Draymond. He's certainly not bad. I think you just know what you're getting for your money there, which could be a reasonable enough play. I prefer it on DraftKings at 63. But I do think there are better options. Sabonis kind of getting lost in the shuffle. just a little bit, more so on DraftKings. 10.7% win rate at 10,500 versus a 17.7% win rate at 10,900 on FanDuel. He's got multi-position on FanDuel, center and power forward. Again, it'll just be really interesting to see how these pieces fall. Him, these two, Giannis, across 3 spots, plus the other power forward guys. I like the win rate. I think he could be, let's see what his ownership looks like on FanDuel. I'll pop back into the chat in just a second. Well, he's more popular than this. More popular than his win rate, too. I like the player, but considering where the public is at versus where we ended up simming out, I'll keep my expectations around here. 10% of our top 150. If you want to take it up to the, call it 15% around the win rate, you'll still be below the field. You'll have a little bit better of a share of them. But given how he's simming out, I don't love it versus some of those top plays. Kind of surprised. I usually do end up liking Sabonis a lot. On DraftKings, at 10.7% win rate, and he only landed at 6%, I'm sure we're dealing with the same situation. Yep. It's about a third of the projected popularity. Again, I do think it's a spot where, say you want to take it up to 10%, grab a little bit more. You're just getting a good player on a short slate, one of the better raw ceilings on the slate. So especially with only 4 games, there's always opportunity to do that. So I don't have a problem with going that high, but I think below the field on both sides on Sabonis is looking like the better option. I think I skipped over Chet. I mentioned him before, but again, at 7.5, he's very reasonably priced with very good per minute numbers, a reasonably high ceiling. The hell happened in this game? Were you getting foul trouble in that game? I didn't notice that. Oklahoma did not play the third quarter. Oh, they got beat bad. That was a 118-93 loss to Milwaukee the other day. And Chet didn't play the fourth quarter rather. Neither did Lou Dort, neither did SGA. Jalen Williams only played a little bit of it. So that's where those minutes went. But obviously a very bad performance there by Chet. There was no foul issues either. He only had 1 foul all game. So yeah, just lost some minutes to underperformance here. Obviously 9.8 FanDuel points is a complete disaster, but wouldn't necessarily expect that again. Not a great matchup though, going up against New Orleans. There is no Brandon Ingram tonight, so a little bit of a just overall downgrade for New Orleans. That game's at a 224 with OKC favored by 1. I don't dislike Chet for the bounce back opportunity here. 8,100 on FanDuel Center only. You got to him 10% of the time, 10.2% win rate. DraftKings an 11% win rate, just 6% exposure because you've got the extra spot to move him around in. He came up about double that mark in the public exposures. Is a little ahead of our win rate. If you wanted to go 10%, you're okay. You're with the field. Bobby Portis not showing much on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you're getting 9.8% win, 8% of the top 150. He's got power forward eligibility and center eligibility on that site, 6,100. Looks like a much better option over there. Always a good per minute performer. Just mid-20s minutes. Projected can have upside to around 30 on the right night. 31.2 FanDuel points in 27.6 minutes. It's about who he is. You've got reasonable expectation to 35-ish fantasy points. And then little ceiling beyond that if he goes over in minutes. So like the Portis play, don't love it. Not a priority by any means, but very playable. Joval, Larry Nance come up as moderate plays on the DraftKings slate. We didn't really get to Larry Nance in our top 150 at 4,200 center only. We did get a little bit, just under 5% of Joval. He had a better win rate at 8.75%. Larry Nance just under 6%, but neither one is by any means a priority. On the FanDuel slate, we did get Joval in 21% of our top 150 lineups at 5,100 center only, which is kind of surprising given all the shares I was talking about up here that I was curious where they were going to fall. Maybe more of those than expected end up falling at power forward, and we just go a little bit discounted with kind of a ceiling in having Joval at 51. It's a low minutes expectation. He played just under 20 the other night, put up 22.2 FanDuel points. He's got this kind of range, 1.2 plus upside, but I'm surprised that he came up that much. Larry Nance in 25 minutes, 4,800 power forward eligible, 14% win rate, but just 9% of the top 150. That's again on FanDuel. Both of those guys are owned by the public. So we're well below on Larry Nance. Call it like a little bit less than half. And then on Joval, we're a couple points below the public. That's a lot of exposure to Joval, though, especially when he's only coming up at a 13.909% win rate. I don't know that I love that position. We got to check what those lineups look like later on in the show. See what you guys are talking about. Thank you for your time, Mighty Saint. I appreciate it. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe, get a chance. Bunch of people here hanging out. Travis, what's going on? Travis Duarte. Everything's good, buddy. Who's the center you like the most for FanDuel? Well, we're talking about that right now. It really depends on how these fall. Let me pull up some of those AceMind lineups real quick. acemind.io, once again. Promo code rotoscouts. I think it gets you a little something. We'll confirm that next time around. Definitely, if you subscribe, though, use the promo code rotoscouts. It will get you access to the sim tools, the optimizer. MLB coming tomorrow. NBA up and running right now. Does look like we're going with a lot of discounted centers on the DraftKings slate. And then Giannis obviously falls into power forward. Where the hell is it? AD. That's weird. A lot of AD falling at power forward, which isn't weird, but there's a bunch of lineups before we really start getting to the meat of where the AD lineups finished performance-wise. We'll take a look at it, but in the top, call it like 40 lineups that I'm looking at on the screen, there's only 2 AD lineups. Maybe it's like 30. But that's kind of surprising. This is FanDuel again. Granted, it was an 18.6% exposure rate, so it's nowhere near the exposure that we got to him on DraftKings, but still, that's 20-ish%. I would expect to see him a few more times in the top overall lineups. And I am seeing there's a bunch of Joval here. There's a couple PJ Washington shares that scampered up to the top of the board. There are a couple of Sabonis shares, a couple of Chet shares, a couple of Bam shares. It looks like in the top overall lineups, as far as the top performers, I do have a few more Bam shares here than AD shares, but it's very close between those two. But I think maybe considering that that spend down at center actually maybe worth it. I am surprised to be talking about Joval in this spot. That was not on my bingo card for this show. 224 point total in that one. 1 point spread again favoring OKC. When's the last time Joval gave us any significant minutes? $20, $22, $18, $17, $19. I mean, that's why he's cheap. That's why he only costs $5,100. I guess if we like Trace Jackson Davis at 63 for 25 minutes, we gotta like a similar producer in Joval for 51. I'm surprised that it came up that way, though. I'd be curious to see how it would come up if we reran it. Which I think I'm going to do, just for the hell of it. Bear with me just one sec while I kick this off. I just want to see if we get any better performances from AD lineups. I'm very surprised at how low he came up. And it could just be a function of the slate with Giannis being power forward only. A lot of those might have gone Giannis's direction because there might not be a comparable producing pay down at power forward, or two of them anyway, to fill out that second power forward spot and get to AD in the center spot. But not getting to AD at all in the top, or two of the top like 30. A little bit surprising. We'll let that run in the background. We'll take a look and compare the two later on. Ace Mind also optimizes Terry's dispensary order. I wish. I've been running David Soto for the sim product. I just run the randomness for the sim at 100%. Let me confirm that. Pretty sure I have it just at 100%. And that just means that it uses the standard deviation that you give it. And if you put it at like 110, I believe it adjusts it by 10% range. That's my understanding of how that works. But yeah, I have it at 100%. So it's just a way to inject a little bit of variance into how the standard deviation functions. But I kind of like the standard deviations that I have. Or the formula that I have to create them, I guess. So I tend not to shuffle it that much. One thing I do tend to try and do, especially like when I'm down to the part of the day where I'm building my lineup, is I'll run a set of sims where I'm using my projection in the projection column, and then in the field projection column, I'll use projections from another site that I refer to, and I'll run it so that it creates the 50,000 lineups, let's say, for the contest pool. It uses their projections to create the pool, and then within that, it uses, for the sim, it uses our projections. So it's like in a lineup, in an environment created with, sounds like the movie preview guy, in a world where lineups are created with Roto Grinders projections. One small site rises up. It takes our projections and then it will sim it against an environment that is represented by the other site's projections. So we see how we perform against where other people's expectations are, basically. Jimmy Butler now questionable. Hey, fantastic. Boy. All right, let's get this thing rolling here. Kevin Love pulling a little bit here at just 4,200. There are not many minutes there, but he is a good per minute performer. And hey, maybe if we lose Jimmy, Kevin Love picks up a little bit of additional run. This is just, I think, small slate bouncing off the price, if nothing else, for Kevin Love. But again, he's still a 1.18 per minute performer. He just doesn't play a lot of minutes anymore, averaging 17.5 for the season. 5%, 2% across town on DraftKings at 3,800, center only. Bam, just below him here on the DraftKings scale, but he would also have a bit of an uptick. Probably a fairly significant one. He's 1.22 for the season. $1.22 for the season, down to 1.16 over the last 2 months or so. I've got him in that territory today. Competitive matchup against Golden State, so I think just putting him around where he's been is appropriate, but that's only if Jimmy plays. If Jimmy doesn't play, and there's a couple guys I got to put out for this one. Come on, Wowie. There we go. All right, so no, if we get no Jimmy, no J-Rich, no Dunk, no Hero. O-Rob doesn't really matter. J-Rich, Dunk, Hero, and Jimmy all out. Yeah, that's fine. So the guys who would probably benefit directly in that situation. I mean, Akez, Haywood Highsmith would get some additional run. Let's see. Bam goes to... Wow, he hasn't... Oh, this is a really small sample. Hold on, let me bring this back to... We're looking at the uptick or the change in rate for Bam Adebayo with no Jimmy Butler on the floor. There's just no sample for this situation. 68 minutes going back to the beginning of the season with no Jimmy, Josh Richardson, Duncan Robinson, or Tyler Hero, and Tyler Hero. In that, Bam is actually down at 1.10. I wouldn't really put much stock in that. Just for the hell of it, what kind of a stretch can we get going back to the start of last year? Jimmy was probable earlier in the day. If it's Q now, it's a downgrade. He was probable earlier. The rest of this is Wednesday news. Let me just put that up there. That is 5:24. Yeesh. 7:30 start tonight. We got some time. All right, going back to a little bit more sample here. Going back to the start of last year. Not ideal because there's guys like Kyle Lowry in this now and everything, but just to get some version with a little bit of meat on it, 363 minutes without Jimmy, Josh Richardson, Duncan Robertson, and Tyler Hero. Bam is at 1.25, which is essentially where he is for the season. So it is who he is, kind of a spot for Bam, but I do think there's a realistic idea of some, any given game upside with if Jimmy doesn't go, but not a major uptick really beyond this for Bam Adebayo. I'll probably give him a little nudge, like we'll get him up probably up over 40 and change fantasy points, but I don't know that we're going from like 39 to like 45. Like I think Kyrie would jump. I think he was right under 40. And he would probably jump by 8-10 points. I think Bam, if Jimmy doesn't play, 2 to 4 points maybe, somewhere in that range. Not really an appreciable uptick. I'll poke around and see if there's other combinations that I can put together that'll give this. Like if I take Kyle Lowry out, Oladipo's in here. It is messy going back that far. So there's probably justification to give him like 1-3, somewhere around there. But it's not a monster move. He does look very playable. 11% across the board on FanDuel at 8,400 at center only. 5.2% winner and 2.6% of the top 150 on DraftKings. And again, it will go up a little bit. Rui, definitely looking pretty playable on FanDuel. This is probably below the public's popularity, though. Oh, yeah. That's about half the public popularity, a little less than half. Solid win rate, 20%, reasonably priced, power forward and small forward, 5,400. Back toward the beginning of the season when he was popping up every now and again with the mess that was the Lakers, I was kind of into the idea of getting to him when he was cheap and not that popular. With popularity on him, it's just kind of looks like this kind of a play. I don't think there's that much edge. I'm comfy being below the field, have some be below the field. 10-15% is probably fine. On DraftKings, he's not all that relevant at 5,600. Power forward and center eligible, 3% winner, less than 1% of our top 150. Nobody else really down board. Maxey, if he plays, just a 2.6% winner, not all that relevant either way. Maxey's probably more relevant if he does not play. Let's get on to a different position. We'll go to forward and we'll talk about most of these guys over again. Some new guys joining the board, though. Dunk was off, Steven. All right, so again, AD top of the board, given the power forward eligibility. Najee Marshall, a reasonable option as far as like an affordable mid-range type guy. Just got 24 minutes on him. It's exactly what he played, or 24.1 the last game. Put up 27.1 FanDuel points. 0.88 for the season. Over the last stretch of games, he was somebody I was kind of working into some cheap lineups when he was not getting a lot of attention. He's been playing at 1.04 over the stretch since like February, and then no Ingram today. Gives a little bit of potential uptick for him. Gives a little potential uptick for Trey Murphy to do a little bit more. Trey's been at 1.06 over that same stretch. Zion with no Ingram over that stretch, 1.34. Not a great matchup again against OKC, but you can see Trey Murphy's just a couple spots down right here. Zion himself is just right here. So 3 interesting pieces from the New Orleans side. Curious to see where CJ landed when we get there. Najee came up at a 36% win rate, 22.9% of the top 150 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he was 35%, 35.3% winner, and 53% of the top 150. It's pretty significant. He's very cheap at 4,300, both forward spots. When we're doing a head-to-head comparison, with him only 300 more than Taurean Prince, who overperformed his talent level, if nothing else here. I've got him getting a fair amount of minutes at 29. He's averaging 28 for the season, though. It's not like Taurean Prince is putting up game after game of slate-winning performances. He's just gaining a little bit of ground with no LeBron. But overall, 0.64 for the season. A low-usage guy, even in this situation. Been playing at a 0.77 level in this situation since the start of the season. I gave him around that tonight. I do think there's reason to believe that you could take a couple points away, but I am giving him a little bit of edge over what he's been. Given how much he came up, actually, I think I might shave that down a little bit so that FanDuel people don't get way too much of him. I think the play is real at the cheap price. It's just on DraftKings having Najee Marshall there, who is a truly decent per minute performer under a normal sense and has been overperforming these rates for 2 months now and is in an improved situation also. I think I greatly prefer Najee for the 300 more. Taurean Prince just not a good per minute guy. Even with the uptick, not a good per minute guy. So he comes with a major asterisk. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to lower this by a little bit because that's too much Taurean Prince. What do we think is fair? He's been at 0.64 for the season. But again, over the last 2 months, or since the beginning of the season with no LeBron, it's been more like 0.77. That is 0.70 on the nose sound. What if I do that? It is also a not great matchup. I could knock him down a little bit for that. They're gaining possession. I think I'm going to knock him down to like right around just under. I'm going to take like 2 points away. He's going to be like right around 20. He'll still hit the board fairly hard, but it won't be at this level. I just don't like the spot for such a weak performer to be coming into that many lineups. I think I gave him a little bit too much there. Put a flag on that one. Everything about the slate's going to change anyway with all the new questionables. Probably no Luka, getting a big boost for Kyrie. Probably no Jimmy now, having the downstream impact from that. So just throw Taurean Prince in the bag of things that are going to change a little bit about this slate. Again, he still will look like a playable mid-range or cheapo kind of part at 4,200 small forward only on FanDuel. You don't have a ton of crazy values at small forward either. Like these guys, well, 37% for $4,600 Harrison Barnes, who's a very similar performer. I think the last thing I want is Harrison Barnes and Taurean Prince in the same lineup. And that is probably exactly what's in a lot of these lineups if Taurean Prince is at 96 and Harrison Barnes is at 37. So I think tempering that a little bit is probably a good idea. There's some better per minute guys mixed in here that probably can get some shares. At 67, I'd rather have Trey. At 5,000, I'd rather have Najee. Malik Monk has small forward eligibility on the DraftKings slate. He came up 26% of the time in our top 150, 31.7% win rate. Not a bad option at 6,500. He's been a 1.12 DraftKings per minute performer, 1.08 on FanDuel. And then minor uptick to 1.1 over the last 2 months. Gave him right around that. On FanDuel at 6,700 with dual guard eligibility, he looks like a major piece of the slate. 44.3% winner, 52.6% of our top 150. Definitely looks like we'll be getting to some Malik Monk on the FanDuel slate. What's up, Alan Marga? You're here a little bit late. We're going in reverse order today, though. We started with centers and we spent a lot of time on it, so we're only a little bit into the forwards tab, and we still got guards to go, so you picked the right day to show up a little bit late. The best value at shooting guard on DraftKings. Well, we'll get there in just a minute, Mamba, my friend. Malik Monk looks like he'd be a pretty decent one at 65, but that's not crazy, crazy low value. Patty Connaughton sitting right there at 3,300 with shooting guard eligibility, 31.3% of the top 150, 27.4% win rate. It is just 4.5 points per dollar because it's only a 15-point projection. It's very, very price and short slate driven, but it is a functional lever to get you two other plays. And as long as those other plays work out and click together for a higher overall score, given the levering up, you're fine with it. But it's not a high ceiling play by any means. And Patty Connaughton falls into that same group with Taurean Prince and Harrison Barnes. Taurean Prince, 0.64 points per minute. Patty Connaughton, 0.65. Harrison Barnes, 0.65. Those are the three worst performing guys on the screen until we get down to Cam Reddish, who's at 0.63. So bear that in mind with all of these guys. You're talking about, I need this dude to go out there and book me 20 and change fantasy points and just pay for himself, pay for that spot at that cheap price. And then it's just a matter of what everybody else in that lineup did for you that you were able to pay up to. But Connaughton on DK at 33 does look like he's got that function. I'll put everybody back in here so I can answer your question better. Jumping ahead. 65. I think it is actually Pat Connaughton at 33. If you want a little, well, I was going to say if you want a little more security, there's Patty Mills, but I don't know that that's true, and he definitely didn't sim out anywhere near as well. I don't think there's any real more security. He's a 0.65 per minute guy himself. Outside of that, nobody really looks all that competitive. 3,200 and just an 11 projection and 11% win rate and 4% of the top 150 for Isaiah Joe at 17 minutes. This is just a matter of these $3,000 prices coming through and, again, creating those opportunities to roster other guys in combination with one another. But I think if that's what you're looking for, Pat Connaughton is at least simming out like your best bet at 3,300 at the shooting guard position. And basically among shooting guards and forwards, it looks like. You do have Taurean Prince, Najee Marshall, these $4,000 options, Harrison Barnes. But even at forward, Pat Connaughton at 33 is the only guy on that price tier that's showing any real value. Lou Dort at 42 is another. Keep Lou Dort in mind. He's a little bit better per minute than these other guys. 0.73 on the FanDuel scale, 0.74 on DraftKings. For 4,200 small forward only on DraftKings, he came up 14.2% of the time in winners, just 10% of the top 150. On FanDuel, we got to him nearly 16% of the time in winners, just 12% of the top 150. Let's see where Lou Dort is owned. That's the guy everybody wants to get over the field on. This is FanDuel. We are right around the field on Lou Dort on FanDuel and a little bit below the field, it looks like, on DraftKings. I think he's very playable. I think the price is effective enough. It is, if you're looking for security of minutes, there's a little bit more there. He averages 28 over 68 games this season. I've got him right at his season-long average. Kind of in or who you are spot overall for OKC. So I have no issues with the Lou Dort play. I don't think there's all that much additional upside from what we normally see from Lou Dort, and you get a lot of clunkers like the 10.6 in 22 minutes. But again, that was a game the other day where OKC just kind of got lit up. A lot of guys didn't play at all in the fourth or didn't play most of the fourth. I think Dort was one of the didn't play at all in the fourth, but I forget. At 42, you get a little bit more wiggle room. Oh, no, you don't. Sorry, we're below the field again on DraftKings at 42. Caleb Martin right now looks all right at 4,700. 14% winner, just 8.6% of our top 150. A little bit better on FanDuel. Dual forward eligibility over there for just 51. 26% winner and 16% of the top 150 on the FanDuel slate. He's well under 5 points per dollar on both sites, but a reasonable expectation of minutes. Let's see what we can nail down for his upside. He's same thing going back to the start of last year with no Jimmy to gain any kind of sample. He's actually underperforming this number, just kind of like Bam is. I'll see if I can find a better version of that with, probably smaller sample, but more accurate to who's going to actually be sharing the court. But maybe some additional time, maybe some additional upside for Caleb Martin. Giannis we talked about already. Zion, again, just another piece. All the guys from New Orleans look pretty decent. No Brandon Ingram tonight. Zion, 19.9% winner, 21% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 16.2% winner on DraftKings for 9,000 at power forward only. Power forward only on both sides, rather. And 11% winner. He's in... We're well under the field at 11%. Taking him out to the win rate is probably fine. 15-ish%. I think I like 15% a little bit better. The public is still well ahead of that mark. The public's almost closing in on double that win rate. So staying below the public does look advisable on Zion, even though I like the spot, but I think we can grab a little bit more than we got to. Just because he's one of the few available stars. Some of his lineups were trending toward the top overall spots in the ones in which he did succeed. So I think there's true ceiling there. There's actual, there's reasonable ceiling for dollar, if you want to put it that way, compared to the Giannis's and so on. A lot of playable dudes in this range. Klay Thompson looking very playable. Andrew Wiggins looking very playable. Draymond looking very playable. Portis kind of group in with that collection of guys. Similar price, similar kind of production. Klay's been playing a little bit more time lately. 32-9 in the last game. Just put up 19.6 FanDuel points. Got him back at 29 minutes. I was bouncing back and forth between like 31 and 29 when I was putting it together. Opted for the lower end. Not a great matchup for them against Miami. Just 4% exposure in the top 150, 4.7% on FanDuel in winning lineups. Over on DraftKings, though, 12.4% against 8% in our top 150. Much more playable on the DraftKings slate for 57 with multi-position. Wiggins multi-position eligible on both. Definitely overperformed on FanDuel. 24% win rate. We got to him 18% of the time. One of the more affordable, reasonable producers at the small forward spot. He's been coming up a little bit lately. They've got him at a fairly low price. He'd been Not great for much of the season. 0.84 per minute over the course of the season. The last stretch, he's been playing at a 0.93 over the last 2 months. So we've seen a little bit of return to form for Andrew Wiggins. That's maybe not totally accounted for in the pricing yet. 12.3% winner, 8% of the top 150. Basically, him and Clay look very, very similar. Given that they're that similar, if you've got an open small forward spot and you're trying to decide between Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins, I think you probably just save the money, save the $600 and go with Wiggins. Same game, similar-ish kind of time. Klay does probably have a little bit of additional upside for time. Klay's been playing at a 0.97 over the last stretch of time. But since you saved $600 on going to a reasonably comparable play, in a direct pivot when they came up with basically identical win rates and basically identical exposure in our top 150, I have no issues getting a little bit of Wiggins if that becomes a head-to-head decision for you. And then Draymond's, again, just looks like who he is on both sites, really. No major advantage for Draymond on either one. A little bit stronger on the DraftKings slate. Got to a little bit more of them. PJ, already at 35 minutes. I don't think we benefit minutes-wise if we get no Maxi Kleber. But PJ was already pulling a 19.8% win rate, 26% of our top 150 on FanDuel, just 5% and a 1.3% exposure rate on DraftKings. He's 55 on FanDuel, power forward and center. He's 53 on DK, power forward and center. I guess just getting boxed out by these guys. PJ's got plenty of time to work with on average. He's just a 0.76 performer over the last 2 months. And then knocking him down a little bit further than that for tonight. Could give him a little bit more room to breathe on the projection, but he's already coming up a ton on the FanDuel slate, and I think we're dialed in about right. For the season, he's 0.86. That's what I'm saying. There's maybe a little bit of room on top, but with Dallas, basically, he's been at 0.76. If we get no Luka and then just, more need to produce for everybody, maybe there's a little bit of a rate uptick. I'll explore what that looks like, and we'll see if we can get a little bit more there. But PJ already looking pretty good on FanDuel. Not really pulling all that much on DraftKings. Kuminga, 13.4% winner, 8% of the top 150 on FanDuel. Just an afterthought on DK. Playable, but not a priority. Rui, we talked about before. But again, on FanDuel, 20% win rate, 13% of the top 150 power forward and small forward for 54. Plenty of time, plenty of expectation for a little bit more to do for a okay per minute performer, 0.81 for the season. A guy who's got around league average usage under normal circumstances, could see a few additional shots, but we'll still have to obviously take from D'Lo, from AD, and guys like that. So not a major edge for Rui, but he looks very, very playable on FanDuel. On DraftKings for 56, didn't really come up that much. We talked about him before when we were breaking down centers. Little 8% for Herb Jones, but didn't get him at all in the top 150 on FanDuel. 3% didn't get him on DraftKings. Timmy Hardaway, 7% and 4% of the top 150, and 2% win and 0.67% of the top 150 over on DK. I would expect to get more Timmy also if we get no Luka. I changed that to Miami, and when we did that lookup, I forgot to note what Timmy goes to. But there's probably a little ground to be gained for Timmy there. Probably a few additional minutes if we're just throwing some surplus minutes around. It's like really dry in here today. I can feel it as I'm talking. Jimmy out. There you go. Mamba was hoping that I didn't say Pat Connaughton. Sorry, buddy. Again, not a strong endorsement given the low per minute, low expectations, but small slate, just the way that price is bouncing off of it, is the only thing that's keeping Patty Connaughton up there. So, all right. Oh, Kevin Love also out. Creates even more minutes for the Jaquez's and Highsmiths and so on of the world. And it also further complicates the board for trying to recreate any semblance of this lineup and get any kind of sample on it. All right. So we already had Kez at... let me pull up the rotations board, actually. All right, Jimmy comes down. That drops 34 minutes into the pool from Jimmy, and then another 14 from Kevin Love. I assume that puts Thomas Bryant, Cole Swider, maybe a little... I don't know if they go O-Rob's direction. Maybe Jamal Cain gets a few scrap minutes. Let's see. Is Jaquez still questionable, or do we get any kind of confirmation on him? He didn't go in that last one, and those guys picked up minutes. That was with Jimmy in. Jaquez has been questionable all day. Caleb Martin also still questionable. Did we get news on him? All right. I'm going to opt for a hangman approach. No news is good news. Stealing a Mel Brooks joke. I will say for now that those guys are probably playing. Jaquez already had 27. I'll check what he's done. He's averaged like 29 for the season, so there's a reasonable expectation, 30, 31, 32 kind of a range. If I do that, and then I'm going to leave Caleb Martin where he is for the moment. 27. Jovic has that weird role where he starts and then plays like 18 minutes every day. Maybe he gains a little bit here. Right now. Yeah, we probably just... Highsmith went 25 the other day with Noah Kez, with Jimmy there. Thomas Bryant played 20 in that game. Kevin Love was also out for that game. Thomas Bryant played 20. Cole Swider played 7. Orlando Robinson only went 5. He's probably the least relevant out of these. Jamal Cain played 9. Those are just like trickle-down minutes. In projections, those probably project as 16 for Bryant, 4 to 6 for Swider, 4 to 6, probably, or maybe 6 to 8 for Jamal Cain. And maybe I throw like a minute or two toward O-Rob in terms of just distributing those minutes. But I think the primary beneficiaries are the guys that are already on the board. It's just a bigger uptick, more to do, more time to do it in for guys like Haywood Highsmith. But yeah, some changes coming for sure. So in addition to the Taurean Prince downgrade that I'm going to just do manually here, we got to get Miami updated. We'll see a lot of changes to this board. So the rest of the show, pretty irrelevant. But we carry on. Always love that point in the show. Let's jump to guards. We're going to talk about this a little bit loosely. D'Angelo Russell, nothing going to change how good he looks at the top of the board. 75% of the top 150 on FanDuel, nearly 60% of the top 150 on DraftKings. The public was... it was, again, basically, I talked about it at the top, but again, in basically half of all lineups on the FanDuel slate, if you wanted to cut down to like our win rate because you don't like D-Lo or you want to get to exposure across other plays if you're building 20 lineups or whatever, no real issue going down to around the win rate. I like them at the 75% range if I'm building 150. 7,500 is a good price. It's a reasonable opportunity for upside. So 70, 75%, somewhere in that neighborhood. If he goes off at an ownership projection in just the 40s, then maybe you could come down, 60% exposure against like a 40% win rate. Technically, increasing your exposure if the field goes down and the play stays the same and the play that good would be the right move. I'm just saying there is wiggle room that gets created there if you were already looking to come down. For me, I'm going to have D-Lo tonight. I'll tell you that much right now. Darren Fox looks Very good. 34% winner on DraftKings, 60% of the top 150 at 8,800. He's a lot more expensive on FanDuel, even against the higher relative cap at 96. Still came up 27.6% of the time in winners, 35% of the time in our top 150. He's point guard only. The other point guard only guys, we do have Dame lands at point guard only. Looks like we'll have a lot of Dame and Fox lineups, actually. 35% Fox and 40% Dame equals a lot of the two of them together, considering they're both point guard only. What I was going to say is like other guys that were sacrificing, like Patty Mills, fine. No issue sacrificing that. Jose Alvarado, totally fine. Isaiah Joe, maybe losing Terry Rozier, another guy probably will see a bit of a workload uptick. Losing that could be significant now. That'll change a little bit. These numbers will go up a little bit for Terry Rozier. But there's not a lot of super high-end point guard only guys. You've got shooting guard eligibility on some of these other guys that hit up at the top, like Malik Monk, who's a pretty good mid-range option. Who else is on this board? There's Luka hiding down here, but he's probably going to come off the slate. SGA didn't really come through the sim very hard at all. 49.9 projection for just 11,000. It's a little bit rough. SGA 1.56 per minute on the season, put up just 26.6 in a 30-minute effort the other night. But again, that was the game that they got smoked by Milwaukee. His underperformance obviously being a part of that. No real breaks against a decent New Orleans squad. Close game, mid-range total. I can see the underperformance by SGA. Everybody, I think, at this point in the season knows full well that this is a potential absolute slate breaker regardless of how it's simmed out. SGA on any given slate could go out and give you 75 FanDuel points and just break the slate. But the way we're looking right now, not really all that strong. Yeah, baseball doesn't really work that way, Trey. I mean, I'll give it a look, but I'm not really a buyer on the Ohtani story. I think the guy just straight ripped him off. Guy had access to his bank accounts. It's super easy. I don't get all like Chris Russo today on High Heat was like screaming, as Chris Russo is prone to do. Just like screaming like, if he's his friend, why would, as if nobody's friend has ever ripped them off or alleged friend has ever ripped them off in the history of time. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I just feel like if Ohtani's out there not trying to not hit a baseball or trying to not strike somebody out, like it would be obvious. You know? And like you could look at some guys from the Black Sox scandal and look at their box scores in that fixed World Series. Guys still had great series. Other guys underperformed that weren't in on the scam. Like it's very tough. It's the same as why I don't like BVP, right? It's a super small sample. You can cherry pick any day like that. Is there any proof of connection? Like if you can, all right, yeah, these are guys that are high school buddies of Shohei Ohtani, something like that. Maybe we gain a little bit of thickness to the thread there. But if it's just, hey, guys in Japan happen to bet on this and it happened to work out for them, it's not Jonte Porter leaving a game with a recurrence of an eye injury. That was a weird one. Adam Scherer tweeted out last night and happened to see it. I'm expecting all my DFS losses related to Jonte Porter to be refunded. Yeah, that was a funny line by Pete Rose. Wish he had a translator because he would have gotten off scot-free. Anyway, yeah, we'll see what comes of it though, Trey. It's interesting. I'll definitely take a look. July 22nd of 2022 and July 4th of 2023. Maybe had a bad hot dog at a 4th of July barbecue. Caused him to underperform. But always important to keep in mind with baseball. That's how baseball works. You succeed in your job 30% of the time in baseball, you make the Hall of Fame. It's just an incredibly variable sport. Let's see. Brandon Podziemski looks minorly playable. 5.6% winner on DK. Not a priority. 0.67% of our top 150. Worse than that on the FanDuel slate. Spencer Dinwiddie, I noticed that I was a couple points lower than the competition. But I don't really, I mean, he had a good game here, 41.9 in 35 minutes. Back to the old Spencer Dinwiddie there, but he's been dramatically underperforming the old Spencer Dinwiddie for the most part. Maybe I'll give him a little bit, but it's not going to take him up to any real strong relevance, I don't think, at 5,200 on FanDuel. 4,600 maybe gains a tiny bit of ground on DraftKings, goes over like a 5% win, maybe into like 1% of the top 150. But I don't really see Spencer Dinwiddie becoming like a strong priority on this slate. There is, again, the potential for some upside there. I'm not ruling it out, something like this. It would just be 0.81 for the season. He's been in like the, what's the range for? .59 over the last couple of months. I gave him better than that today. If you gave him if you give him right on his season-long mark with the 24 minutes, he'd be at like a 19-point projection. But I don't know. I'm more comfortable, I think, keeping him around what he's been, not the outlier uptick game. Oof. Mamba, I remember you mentioning that. Cost me $100K on that slate. Oof. Send an email to customer service. Maybe they'll at least cut you out some promos or something. That sucks. Sorry, buddy. I do remember. I had him that day. I didn't have a lineup nearly that competitive. But that sucks, dude. Just in the idea that it costs them nothing to give you a little something, I would definitely send a DK or FanDuel or whatever. Send them an email, a polite one. Just, hey, excuse me. I was impacted by this, and it's clearly a thing, and the NBA is investigating, and so are the feds and blah, blah, blah. I would send it, and they might kick you back something. It might take a little while, but they might kick you back something because it's a zero-cost customer service effort for them. So, they'll give it to you in DK dollars or whatever. But maybe you get something. But, yeah, I don't think it's going to be $100K. That blows. Fucking guy. Like, it's going to be an issue. Like, it's not directly these, billionaire, $100 million type guys, these, the superstars, but the down bench guys making around the league minimum, young players making around the league minimum, and more to the point with a bunch of buddies who don't make anything. And I'm not saying like, they're poor, but like, guys like me, right? Guys like you, working guys, they're their friends. And yeah, I can see a lot of down bench guys doing stuff like this. So the idea that the NBA is getting deeper and deeper into this with, adding the live lines to their broadcast on NBA, whatever the streaming service's name, going brain dead. The fact that they're adding all of that stuff, like it's a bit of a slippery slope. I'm all for sports betting, and it's been worldwide with soccer and everything. There's all kinds of betting on every game and every line and every possible, bent blade of grass to the left or the right on every soccer game for years and years in Europe. And they've got it basically figured out. You see the occasional scandal, but NBA's got to kind of wake up to that, I think. Anyway. Jose Alvarado, 20% winner on FanDuel, 12% of the top 150. Over on DraftKings, an 11% win, 6% of the top 150. Reasonable performer, 0.90 per minute for the season, just playing around 18 minutes a night. Gave him a little bit more than that. Again, they're down to Brandon Ingram, so there might just be additional time, and it's just spreading out some of those minutes. Not a direct beneficiary of that necessarily, but it looks playable at 4,400, point guard only on the FanDuel slate. Less than that on the DraftKings slate. He's a mixer on DraftKings at best. Isaiah Joe is one of those very, very cheap options at 3,200 on DraftKings, but considering that he's significantly under projected compared to Pat Connaughton by 3.5 points there, I do think that there's a reason to expect Connaughton's probably the better option. So I would just lean in that direction. Again, Terry Rozier, we'll see an uptick from where he is now once we get the updates in. He already looked pretty playable. We'll get a little bit of a rates boost, maybe 2 additional minutes just again for, no Jimmy there. Everybody else is going to have to pick up the slack, so you want your better players on the court. Malik Beasley, nobody's favorite. 0.68 per minute, 14% usage type guy, 17% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 18.6% winner. I do like some of these options up here better than him. So in only a few lineups, I think you can avoid Beasley. If you're building out anything over, a handful of lineups, you definitely want to have a couple shares anyway. Not nearly my favorite option on this slate or any slate though. 8% across the board for him at 47 on DraftKings. He was shooting threes like lights out earlier. Yeah, 43% still from 3. 6.7 a game, making 2.9 a game. You get a couple boards, couple threes, and that's about it from Malik Beasley on any given slate, basically regardless of how long he plays. The upside, the true ceiling games are few and far between, and we get a lot more of these. 25 minutes, 12.4 FanDuel points. Mamba is going to make sure to remind me to take all the Eagles over props this season. I love the Saquon signing for the Eagles. I thought it was perfect for them. But I do think there's something to the chase overs at least the first couple weeks of the NFL season, given the changes to the kickoff rules. Teams are going to be starting on the 35 for touchbacks now. They're going for the XFL style kickoff and everything. So, keep an eye obviously on where they are compared to where they were historically week 1. But week 1 upside, at least for overs, seems fairly realistic. Anybody else worth talking about on here? Dame, super playable. Actually, fairly critical. I mentioned him in conjunction with Darren Fox as point guard only guys that we're getting a lot of. But just to talk about him on his own, 40% of the top 150 on FanDuel against a 23% win rate at 9,000 point guard only, one of the better star options on the slate. 8,900 on DraftKings, not nearly as critical, 14%. At worst, a very, very solid mixer on a slate where we've got money to spend. And we lost one of our stars already, and we're in danger of losing a couple other stars. Dame is definitely an option to keep in mind. CJ, I mentioned I wanted to look for CJ. Looks very, very good on FanDuel. 7,600. Dual guard eligibility, 41.6% winner. Got into more than half of our top 150 lineups. On DraftKings, 32% of our top 150 with a 21.9% win rate. Very strong spot for CJ. Again, just another one more to do. Typical minutes, I think I gave him maybe 1-2 additional minutes over what he normally goes. But even if he just plays his average, I've got him actually right at what he's been, 1.08 over the recent run with no Brandon Ingram out there. So I like the spot for CJ with this kind of upside. The price is right for a good upside game from CJ. Not the greatest matchup. It's the only thing working against him here, really. Trace Jackson Davis is now out. That's a wrinkle. He was questionable. I should have thought about that one before the show. I forgot that he was questionable. Okay, so he was looking good and was taking up some room at the top of the board there. Dumping 25 minutes back into the pool for Golden State. Minor minutes movement. Probably just I'll throw like an additional surplus minutes. A couple Wiggins way. Maybe 1 or 2 for maybe like 1 or 2 minutes for like Wiggins, Kuminga, and Draymond. I had Draymond and Kuminga both at 30. I had Wiggins just at 27. So there's a little bit of room there for those guys. And then, as mentioned before, Clay's been playing a little bit more recently. He went 33 in the last game. So I think maybe taking him from the 29 I had given him, just on the idea of bodies and a restructured group, maybe a little bit of uptick there. And then downboard, got Podziemski at 26 already. Who's healthy between... is it Looney? Looney healthy? I think he is. Yeah, TJD was the only guy on the injury report, so I assume that Kevon Looney picks up some minutes here. And then what's the... Oh, people are yelling in the hallway again. They must be excited about Trace Jackson-Davis being ruled out too. Looney played 6 minutes 3 games ago. Not overly significant there. Mo Moody has some minutes on the board in recent games. I guess Dario Saric is still alive too. He played 5 minutes 2 games ago. Or 3 games ago, rather. They had a handful of downbench minutes. I assume that was in a blowout, just some fourth quarter run, 5-6 minutes at the end of a game somewhere. I'm not looking at the breakdown, but I will before I update it. But yeah, we'll have some spread. I don't know that it necessarily creates like a direct go-to value guy losing TJD there, rather than the other guys who were already on the board. The more integral parts of Golden State maybe get a little bit better just from a minor uptick in a couple of minutes. Because they're capable of mixing these guys around. Kind of like what the Celtics do when it's like, you lose a Drew Holiday and Derek White, but it's not directly Peyton Pritchard somehow. It's Sammy Hauser steps in, starts alongside Porzingis and Horford, and they go with Jalen and Tatum, or Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. So similar kind of a thing with Golden State where they could move some of these pieces around a little bit along those lines. They are a little guard heavy, of course. But I don't necessarily know, because it was only 25 minutes that we're losing. So it's not like I'm taking 30 minutes and just dumping it on a guy who had no minutes before at a very cheap price. It's not, I don't think, how it's going to come out the other side here. Just in thinking it through as I'm talking about it. Yeah, I do think that Saric will grab at least a handful of minutes there, Demon Nat. Yeah, I appreciate the mention there, because I had forgotten that he existed for a moment. So let's see. To round this out, anybody that was critical that we didn't talk about. Keon Ellis, nobody really likes, but he's cheap. 5,000 on FanDuel with 26 minutes projected. Played nearly 24 the other night, put up nearly 12. He has been better than that in a points per minute sense. Looks a little bit better for the cheaper price at 4,500, both guard spots on DraftKings. But again, nobody's idea of a priority play. And I think even with his cheap price, he's probably at this point just gotten eclipsed by better plays that have been created during the course of the show. Let's wind this sucker down. acemind.io, our partners for Sims. They have a 3-day free trial going on right now for all users. And we will, the promo code rotoscouts, if you're going over to check out AceMind, who again, I believe tomorrow, but at the very least by opening day, should have the MLB product up and running. If you use promo code rotoscouts, spelled exactly like it sounds, exactly like you see it on the screen, you get 20% off your first month after your trial period of 3 days. So you can sign up for a 3-day free trial right now over at acemind.io. Excuse me. And you can check it out. Use it against the NBA slate today. They've got an optimizer. They've got Sims. That's all the data that we've been looking at all season on these shows. It's what I've been using for my own optimization purposes for both football and basketball this season. And again, promo scout roto code. Promo code rotoscouts gives you 20% off your first month after your trial period over there. So go check those guys out. And that's what's on the screen right now. We're going to take a look at our DraftKings pool here. These lineups are not going to be all that relevant anymore because everything about this slate has changed. But you can see where we were at. A lot of the guys that we talked about through the show. D'Lo is going to maintain this value. No doubt about it. D'Angelo Russell, key play on this slate. Dame, I think he was looking better as we broke it down on FanDuel, but also was looking playable on DraftKings and has a pretty decent spot there. Directly to the point, you've got room for, as we talked about, a star-heavy build with like an Anthony Davis, a 10K plus pay-up type, a Giannis. But you've also got room for, and we lost Jimmy already, so this is a little bit changed already, but this was the lineup that I mentioned early in the show when somebody asked if you could get away with playing a lineup that didn't have a 10K player in it. We had D'Lo, Pat Connaughton, and Jimmy, Taurean Prince, TJD, who's also not on the slate anymore, De'Aaron Fox, Najee Marshall, and Zion. Was a very like balanced looking lineup in comparison to that top one that did get up to AD or this next one that used Giannis and is a little bit more Starsy Scrubsy. So yes, there was room for both. I think we're probably a little bit more angled towards Starsy Scrubsy now, but I bet you could still get away with all these balanced type constructions. It's just you're going to be lacking Jimmy. You're going to be lacking TJD to do it with now. You'll probably see a lot of De'Aaron Fox, a lot of Dame Lillard in that mix. You'll still be getting D'Lo all across the board in that. You'll be getting our value types, although Taurean Prince, again, is going to come down a little bit. You'll be getting values from some of the Heat players will be created. We'll see what happens with that mix, but again, the various small forwards and wings and whatnot from the Heat will pick up a little bit of additional value. We'll see a little bit of additional value probably for Terry Rozier. We'll probably see a tiny bit more Bam, although as we looked at, doesn't really drive the per minute mark. But the lack of TJD landing in all of these center spots now might create a little bit more room for that too. If you're interested, those top lineups, we're bringing you back $200 against your, I forget what this one is. Might be, was it a 15? I forget. Doesn't matter. It was bringing you back $200 on average, 0.14% win probability, and you'd need to replace TJD, but I think you could still play it. Although I don't love the Taurean Prince of it all. Again, these lineups are not all that relevant anymore just because of the changing news. Let's open up the one I reran there. I want to see how AD... Whoops. Oh, I must have clicked it another time. That's why there's an extra. This was the second one, the one I reran. The goal of that was to see whether AD came up in the very top lineups a little bit more. It looks like he landed in one of them. A lot of that's happenstance, right? We're running this 50,000 times, and it's a matter of how these lineups perform over that. So over 50,000 lineups, if you run one and then you run another one, you could see this one go from here to down here is like where that lineup or a similar one was. But it looks like we got a little bit more in that rerun without changing anything. We got a little bit more high-performing AD lineups. And again, there's more salary now. There's a lot of different variables here. But Joval, I would at least strongly consider that pay down option at center still on FanDuel, considering you can get Giannis at power forward. You can get AD at power forward. You can get a lot of the good plays. You can get the double strong guard build with Dame Lillard and De'Aaron Fox. So a lot to consider there, but I do like this three-man of Dame, De'Aaron Fox, D'Angelo Russell, Triple D. I'm not completely sold on the Joval thing. But considering his price and what it can buy you here, I even like it as a four-man actually with Dame, De'Aaron Fox, D'Angelo Russell, and then CJ McCollum screwing up our D theme there. But that's a four-man guard group that is pretty easy to get behind. I don't dislike the Najee Marshall play. We're downgrading this. This is also a low-end per-minute performer. Chris Middleton is fine. He's Chris Middleton, whatever. I feel the same way about Joval. So this could be improved. But I think foundationally, like you would have to have, 1, 2, 1, 2, something like that, like two of those guys. And then maybe you could bounce a couple other spots around. Maybe you could use a Lou Dort instead of a Chris Middleton. Forget where the salary goes, but maybe that buys you something here. Larry Nance or Keegan Murray or whatever. I don't think those are comparable. Maybe Rui Hachimura with a little bit of... Rui's probably got a little bit more true ceiling on him. I don't know what the price difference is between him and Harrison Barnes. But if you could buy that, maybe. So, like, small moves like that potentially get you a little bit. But I really like this combo. I really like that combo. And then this is... Adding the fourth man in there is not bad. If you get Kyrie's also in that mix. If there's a world in which is Kyrie point guard only? He's got to have shooting guard on FanDuel, right? He does. I don't know if you could afford it, but that would be an interesting fourth man in the mix here. He's more expensive than CJ and D'Lo. Kyrie's in the 9s, so he's comparable with these two. Considering how weak this gets toward the back end, I'm not sure if you get all three reasonably, where it would math out that Kyrie with these two is a better play than these two with those two. But it would at least be on the board, and Kyrie would be a direct replacement for one of these two guys, and I would guess would math out a little stronger. But they're both very good plays. And that, I think, my friends, is that. Triple D was a great show. Yeah, the accidental Guy Fieri reference at the end of the show. Not bad. Diners, drive-ins, and dives. Drive-ins, drive-thrus. Forget. Is it over? Do they not make it anymore? I know that there's marathons on constantly. I saw an episode of it not too long ago. Travis Duarte, I got Hardaway, Highsmith, Portis, Wiggins, Holmgren after those first three. That works. Yeah, with the potential uptick for Timmy. I like that better if Luka doesn't go. But Timmy's all right. You know, you get what you get out of Timmy. Highsmith should see an upgrade. I like Portis on a per minute sense. We talked about Wiggins I like, and we talked about Holmgren. I like that. It's a good combo. Yeah. None of the changes during the show, the Jimmy Butler and so on, Mamba has been accounted for at all in these sims. Those were all run before the show started. It's the best we can do. Need to get like a secretary over here. Have him or her run the sims, feed them back to me during the shows. I appreciate you too, Trey. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe, guys. If you're going over to Ace Mine, remember baseball starting up tomorrow. So, think about when you might want to kick off your subscription, but definitely consider those guys going into the season for your sim needs, for your optimizer needs. Rotoscouts is the promo code. You get 20% off. You also get a 3-day free trial over there. So if you start it in line, you get the first couple of days of the baseball season for free, and then you get 20% off of that with the promo code Rotoscouts. How about that for advertising? With that in mind, gang, good luck out there. Updates will be up on the site momentarily. Well, 10 minutes or so. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We will see you tomorrow for the last basketball show of the season. Probably not, but let's be realistic. We're going to be talking a lot more baseball in the coming days. I'll see you guys.